Our today's topic is the presidential and parliamentary systems of government. And this is going to be the sequence. We will learn about the features of presidential system, then the features of parliamentary system, and the merits and demerits of both systems. And then we will conclude it. The parliamentary government. The primary function of a government is to make and execute laws. And two different organs of government in modern states perform these functions. The legislatures, they enact laws while the executive branch executes laws in day-to-day administration. The parliamentary system, when Garner defines it, he says that in a parliamentary form of government, there is a close collaboration between the body that makes laws and is custodian of finances on the one hand, and those who execute laws and spend money on the other. This system is also termed as responsible government, as executive is accountable to the legislature. Both the executive and the legislatures, they are working together, and the executive is part of the legislature. So they make laws and they execute laws at the same time. And they are the custodian of the finances as well, and execute laws and spend money. And this system is also termed as responsible government, as executive is accountable to the legislature, because a legislature is there and the executive is part of the legislature. So that's why the executive is considered as accountable and responsible to the legislature. So executive are part of the legislature. So prime minister or other ministers, they are part of the legislature. They are in the parliament. So they are accountable. They are answerable to the legislatures, are the representative of the people. Presidential government. Under a presidential form, there is a separation of power between both the branches of government. The executive authority is concentrated in the president, who is head of the government as well as head of the state. In parliamentary system, the head of state is a different person and the head of government is a different person. But in the presidential system, the executive authority is concentrated in the president, who is head of the government and head of the state at the same time. And this is chapter number 8. The administrative policy is chalked out by the president, which is not subject to the ratification by the legislature. So all administrative policies are basically chalked out by the president, which does not require any kind of ratification by the legislature. So president is sole authority in making administrative policy. And the president has a free hand in exercising the powers conferred on him by the Constitution. So a rigid Constitution, or you can say that the supremacy of the Constitution is upheld in presidential system. The members of presidential cabinet are appointed by the president, who is individually accountable to the president. and the legislature performs its functions independent of the control or guidance of the executive. Hence, both branches of the government are directly accountable to the people. Like the president is accountable to the people, and the legislature, they are accountable to the people. And legislature, it does not have any influence on the policies of the or on the parts of the president or the executive, and likewise the president, it has no influence on the uh, working or on the performance of the legislature. So both branches, they are accountable to the people. And the pristine example of this system, the presidential system, it exists in America, while parliamentary system, that is originated in Britain and now applicable in Pakistan, India, and some other countries as well. What are the salient features of a presidential system? So the first one, that is election of the chief executive. And in the presidential system, the people directly vote for their beloved candidate. The chief executive is elected directly or indirectly by the people. In America, for example, the president is elected indirectly through an electoral college specifically formed for the purpose, while the members of electoral college are elected directly by the voters in each state. And in France, the people, they directly vote for the president. So there are two ways: the directly, they are choosing or electing their president, or the indirectly they choose. So there is an electoral college, so through which the people elect their president in the United States of America. And the tenure of the president is fixed, and he cannot be removed from the office prior to the expiry of that period, so except through impeachment. So the tenure, which is fixed of 4 years, so no one can throw him out from the office. So there is only one way, that is impeachment, and this is a very complicated system to kick him out. So that's why it does not happen quite often. So the president, it remains in the office, and he does not have any kind of threat from losing the job. The legislature cannot remove him by passing a vote of no confidence, as it happens in a parliamentary setup in respect of cabinet. Legislature cannot remove the president, like by passing a vote of no confidence. Like in parliamentary system, there is a mechanism available that if government or the cabinet, they loses the majority in the parliament, in the legislature, so they are supposed to leave. But in the presidential system, there is no such a system of no vote of no confidence. And separation of powers. So in presidential government, there is a separation of powers between the executive and legislature, while this division is demarcated by constitutional law, which is considered the supreme law of the land. The presidential system, both organs of the government, the executive and the legislature, they work separately. They exercise their power separately. The position of ministers. The office of the president is regarded as solitary executive. So he is the sole authority. He appoints his ministers or advisors from amongst the persons who are not the members of the legislature. And moreover, it is not obligatory on the president to appoint any party man as member of his council. He has a free hand in the choice of his subordinates. Like the president, he has the authority to appoint anyone who thinks that he is the fit person, the right person for this job, so he can appoint him. So he can appoint the minister or the secretary from the opposition as well. So it is the sole power of the president. And check and balances. So surely there must be a check and balance system, and complete separation of powers between the branches of government, however, is neither possible nor desirable. A system of check and balances is always entertained, and the president shares to some extent in legislation, while legislatures also exercise their control over administrative matters. So there is separation of power, but still the president shares to some extent, not a larger extent, but to some extent. In legislation, he plays his role, and the legislature, they exercise some control over administrative matters as well. So there is a check and balance in presidential system. And what are the features of parliamentary system? First, what is the role of the head of the state? So under the parliamentary system, head of the state has to perform almost ceremonial functions. We are talking about head of the state. Head of the state perform ceremonial functions. The office may be elective or based on hereditary succession. It is incumbent is supposed to act on the advice of the cabinet. So whoever holds the office of the president or the head of the state, like in Pakistan, head of state is the president who acts on the advice of the cabinet. And this office may be elective, like we do have in Pakistan. So there is a procedure, electoral procedure. So the president is elected, the head of state is elected. But in UK, there is a hereditary succession. So when one family members goes, the other holds the same job. And the head of the state, it performs only the ceremonial functions. You will see him on certain occasions, not in every matter of the government. The relation with the legislatures in parliamentary system. As the cabinet is part of the legislature in parliamentary system, and all ministers are the members of the parliament. So the parliamentary system, so the ministers, they are part of the parliament. And in the presidential system, on the other hand, we learned that the president can appoint anyone other than the members of the parliament. But here the relationship between the executive and the legislature is a very close one. And the formation of cabinet. The members of cabinet are elected directly on popular basis as members of parliament. So people do vote. There are certain constituencies, and people vote for them, and people do represent them, and in the parliament. And while the parliament in its very first session forms the cabinet, so when there is the first session, in the very first session, there are few people who take oath as ministers, and the chief executive, who is the head of the government as well. Political homogeneity. Cabinet works as team. All the differences of opinion are resolved within the cabinet meetings and not let known outside. If any ministers continues to disagree with any policy, he is expected to resign from his office. So cabinet, they work very closely, then they work as a team, and if there are any differences, so they are resolved within the cabinet meeting. So there might be some conflict or some clash over some interest of the people, and these cabinet meetings, whatever the proceedings, whatever the agenda are discussed, so the whole procedure that is not let known outside. And if any minister disagree to any policy with the government, with any policy of the government or the cabinet, so he can leave, he can resign from the office. Ascendancy of the prime minister. Like all the members of cabinet are considered equal under the leadership of prime minister. And in any case of difference of opinion with the ministers, prime minister can ask him to resign. So all members, they got equal position, and the prime minister is the chief executive, who is the leader of that team. And if any difference arises, so prime minister can ask that concerned minister to resign. And there is a limited separation of power, that all the members of cabinet are the members of parliament. As such, cabinet drafts the bills to initiate legislation. So most of the bills which are ultimately translated into laws are those which are introduced by the cabinet, not known as government bills. So majority of the bills are which are introduced in the parliament, they are drafted and initiated by the executive or by the government. So that's why they are known as the treasury bills. And there is a very limited separation of powers. Very limited separation of power, and the legislature, they play their role, and the executive, they play their role in the legislation as well. And political responsibility, as the collective cabinet is collectively accountable to the parliament, and the parliament can ask questions from the ministers about administrative affairs and criticize their policies, as the cabinet is part of the parliament, so they are collectively accountable to the parliament. You might have seen in the proceedings of the parliament that if the relevant minister is not there in the parliament, so it is the responsibility of the minister present in the parliament to respond to a question. So because the cabinet work as a team and they are collectively accountable to the Parliament. And majority of time we have learned that they criticize their policies. And in the parliamentary form of government, there is collective responsibility as well. All the ministers are collectively accountable to the parliament. What are the merits and demerits? The merits of presidential systems and the demerits of parliamentary system. So let's see, what are they? Stable government. The term of the chief executive is fixed in a presidential form, as he can't be removed from his office prior to the termination of his term except through impeachment. So the term of the president, it is fixed, and there is only one way to remove him from the office, and that is impeachment. And this shows the stability in the presidential system. Stability in the government enables the president to initiate long-term planning and concentrate his full attention to administrative affairs. So when you are feeling secure and stable, and there is no threat to your position or your job, so definitely you will make long policies, long-term planning, and you will concentrate on your with full attention on administrative affairs. And on the other hand, in the parliamentary system, the life of cabinet form of government, the parliamentary system, is dependent on the support of the parliament. So if parliament supports the government and the government enjoys the majority in the parliament, so that's why the parliamentary system will prevail and it will work better. But it is mostly dependent on the support of the parliament. Appointment of talent. Presidential system may all the administrative parts are concentrated in the chief executive, who can assign administrative duties to the most competent persons, and he is not compelled to take the ministers from the legislatures or the parliament. So there is an appointment of talent, that the right person for the right job, so he can assign the duties to anyone who is the most competent. Whereas in the cabinet form of government, in the parliamentary system, only such person can be included in the ministry who are members of the legislature, irrespective of their ability. So whoever comes into the parliament can be a minister and can be a part of the cabinet. Efficiency. The important advantage of presidential system lies in its output. So it performs way better than the other systems. The in charge of different portfolios can concentrate their attention on administrative matters, as they do not have to waste their time in the legislative process. So they don't play any role in the legislation. So they stay focused on the administrative matters. So that's why they efficiently play their role. And the president has a free hand in making administrative policies. It is not, it does not rely on the parliament to help him out in making administrative policies. But a different situation prevails in the parliamentary form, where administrative policies generally reflect political expediencies and are based on political bargaining. So administrative policies, they are mostly reflect political expediencies, And political bargaining, there are many people with their vested interest, and they bargain with the government to support him on certain policies. So separation of power. There is a comparatively less probability regarding the emergence of autocratic trends under presidential form, as there is division of legislative and administrative powers between different departments. So there is a suppression of power, complete suppression of power under the presidential form of government. The legislature and the administrative powers, both, they are two different departments. And in the parliamentary form of government, the cabinet may assume the role of dictator. When they join hands together, they can make any policy, they can pass any bill which can be against the opposition and against the will of the people. So it can control legislation effectively. So they can play their role very powerfully effectively in the legislation as well. And most of the bills which are later transformed into laws are government bills. So majority of the bills which are passed by the parliament, they are the government bills, because every bill needs majority votes in the parliament, and government enjoys majority in the parliamentary system. So the opposition, they hardly find the majority support in the parliament. So it is hard for the opposition to get a bill passed by the parliament because they don't enjoy majority. Party politics. There is comparatively less polarization within the legislative chambers under a presidential setup on account of the working of separation of power. Because the legislature, it plays its role, and it has nothing to do with the presidential setup. But a parliamentary system, so party division within the legislative chamber is rigidly organized. Ruling party is expected to support all government bills, and the opposition to criticize and oppose. When you are part of a ruling party or ruling coalition, so you are expected to support all the government bills. And if you are not part of the ruling party or ruling coalition, so definitely your job is to criticize and oppose that bill. So this party division within the legislative chamber is very rigidly organized. And then the accountability. Administrative responsibility under presidential system can be clearly located in one person. So if there is anything wrong on the administrative, as on the administrative responsibility, so it can be clearly located that it was the presidential job, so he failed to do so. So you can clearly locate one person, and that is the president or his secretary who is assigned a job. But in parliamentary system, the responsibility stands divided between the cabinet and the parliament, as all administrative policies got to be ratified by the parliament. So majority of the time, the government, the executive, they blame opposition for not ratification, for not verifying the administrative policies. So the responsibilities, they are divided between the cabinet, the executive, and the parliament. And the political stability, the presidential form of government is most suitable for those societies where people are divided on ethnic, racial, or religious basis. Like in the country like we live, and that is the most divided country, like in Pakistan and in America. So it can work better because there is a very close, you can say that very open division that on ethnic, racial, and religious basis. So in the presidential executive can effectively most control the administration and develop consensus on national issues. And in the parliamentary system, it is dependent on many preconditions due to its peculiar structure. So the structure is that the people who are ethnically in majority and who are religiously in majority, they holds the power. They are elected by the people. But in the presidential system, everyone gets its right, and it is the most suitable for the most divided societies. What are the merits of parliamentary and demerits of presidential system? Number one, the coordination within the government. Strong arguments are put forward in favor of parliamentary form of government. The first and the foremost is the integration between two branches of government, making enactments of laws in line with the administrative requirements and the administrative policies reflecting popular trends. So there is a very close collaboration and coordination between the two branches of government, the executive and the legislation. On the other hand, legislation is done without the guidance of the executive due to working of separation of power under presidential system. So president plays no role in the lawmaking. So that's why the legislation is done without the guidance. So here the guidance in the parliamentary system, the guidance is given, is provided to the legislature by the government that this kind of a law is necessary to be introduced, and then majority of the bills which are passed in the parliament are government bills. So separation of power is the main feature of presidential system, and there is flexibility in parliamentary system. Like parliamentary system is flexible enough to adjust itself according to the need of the changing circumstances. In case public policy is not in line with the popular demands, it can be reshaped under the pressure of parliament. So parliamentary system is very flexible, and with the changing circumstances, it can adjust itself. So if the public policy it is not according to the will of the people, so it can be reshaped under the pressure of the parliament. While on the other hand, the presidential system, the tenure of the chief executive is fixed and cannot be removed prior to the expiry of his term, and it is not possible for the legislature to kick him out. So in the parliamentary system, it is possible because there is an option of vote of no confidence. Parliamentary system is considered as the responsible government, as the parliamentary government is regarded as the responsible type of government because the cabinet is accountable to the parliament. Like there is no one in the presidential system, because the cabinet of the president is are the secretaries of the president. They are not accountable to the parliament. They are only accountable to the president. But in the parliament, the cabinet, the ministers, they are accountable to the parliament. And in the presidential system, accountable is not responsible to the legislature, as the president is exclusively accountable directly to the people. And this accountability is vague, because how people will made you accountable? So there is no way in presidential system. So there is only one way, and that is that in next election people, they can reject them. And then the season executive. Formation of cabinet. The performance of the members within the parliament is fully kept into consideration, like who is actively participating and who is not. Generally, most seasoned politicians who might have demonstrated their capabilities in the parliament are included in the cabinet. So the most seasoned one, the experienced lot, they are given a chance to demonstrate their capabilities, and they are included in the cabinet as well. On the other hand, the president can appoint any person as his advisor on the basis of his personal liking, irrespective of his capabilities. And president can appoint anyone as his advisor, and maybe it not because of his capabilities, but because of his personal liking. And sound administrative policies, as the Prime Minister has the support of legislative majority in the presidential system, and the administrative policies have the sanction of favorable laws. So all the administrative policies, they are required the favor of the parliament. And the presidential executive has to face difficulties due to non-cooperation of legislature, which may many times happen in USA. So there is complete separation of power. So that's why majority of the time the legislature, it does not cooperate with the executive, and it creates some difficulties. And we can conclude that on the basis of the comparative analysis of both forms of government, both have some merits as well as some shortcomings. And it is difficult to assert categorically as to which one is the most suitable, but it is assumed that parliamentary systems suits such societies where people are politically vigilant, respectful to the conventions of the constitution, and two-party system is well established. And this system is working well in Britain because the people are politically vigilant. They play their role in every political matter, and they are respectful to the conventions of the constitution. And the presidential system is working well in America, and it has an edge over the parliamentary system in respect of its stability and comparative structural simplicity. And it has the stability and the comparative structural simplicity. And that's all. If you have any question or you have any query, so you can ask, please.